She stormed onto my land like she owned the whole valley. "You can't block the water line, sir. It's for the community," she shouted, waving a clipboard with that smug HOA logo. I looked at her boots sinking into my ranch soil and said calmly, "This isn't community land. This is my ranch." But Karen didn't even blink. She tapped her fake badge and barked, "I'm authorized by the HOA board to oversee all infrastructure here." I almost laughed. That pipeline she mentioned her HOA had installed it through the middle of my pasture without even telling me. The first time I saw the trenches, my cattle were restless and my fences were broken. When I called the county office, they said no permit had ever been filed. So when she came demanding I reopen the valve I had just shut, I knew exactly what was going on. She called me a criminal. "You're stealing water from 50 families," she screamed, pretending to be some kind of hero, but I stayed silent, letting her dig her own hole. Behind her, 2 HOA men in bright orange vests were recording me like I was on trial. That's when she made her mistake. She pointed at my barn and yelled, "If you don't unlock that valve right now, I'll have the sheriff seize your property." I smiled a little. "Go ahead," I said. "You might want to check who owns that pipeline before you make that call." Her face twitched just slightly. She looked unsure for the first time. "What do you mean, who owns it?" "It's HOA property." I stepped closer, just enough for her to feel the edge in my voice. "That line runs under federal land. You drilled into it without clearance." She froze. For a few seconds, the only sound was the wind scraping against the dry grass. Then she laughed nervously and said, "You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare shut down a whole neighborhood's supply." I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded document and held it out. "You see this? Department of Land Management authorization. And the name right there. Yeah, that's me." She didn't even take it, just stared, her mouth twitching. "You're lying," she whispered. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Then go ahead, Karen, call the sheriff. But this time, make sure they bring the real one." The color drained from her face. She stepped back, her radio trembling in her hand. Somewhere behind her, one of the workers muttered, "Ma'am, maybe we should go." But she didn't move, not yet. Because she still had one card left and she was about to play it. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're messing with." And she was right about one thing. She had no idea who I really was. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of engines rumbling outside my ranch. When I looked through the window, I counted 3 HOA trucks and a county vehicle parked by my front gate. Karen stood at the center of it all, sunglasses on, arms crossed, like she was directing a military raid. Her voice carried through the field. "That's the one. He tampered with public property and endangered the water line." 2 uniformed men approached my porch, one of them holding a citation folder. I stepped outside slowly, calm as ever. "Morning, gentlemen," I said. "Mind telling me what this is about?" Karen interrupted before they could speak. "You're under investigation for property damage and obstruction. Step aside while we inspect your land." I folded my arms. "Got a warrant?" Her lips twitched. "We don't need one. This falls under HOA emergency authority." The sheriff beside her frowned. "Ma'am, HOA authority doesn't override private ownership," he said quietly, flipping through his notepad. But Karen wasn't listening. She grabbed the clipboard from one of her men and shoved it in my face. "You signed an agreement when you bought this property." I took the paper, scanned it once, and let out a low laugh. "This signature isn't mine." "Nice try, though." Her jaw tightened. "You're going to regret mocking this board." I could feel her temper boiling. But what she didn't know was that every second of this was being recorded by my gate camera, audio and all. I glanced up at the small, blinking red light just above her head. She didn't even notice. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'll handle this from here." He turned to me and said, "Sir, if you could just give me your property documents, I'll verify ownership." "Of course," I replied, walking back inside for the file. When I returned, Karen was whispering something into her radio. Her face looked pale now, nervous even. She didn't know I could hear the faint words, "He's bluffing. The line's under county regulation, not federal, right?" I handed the sheriff my folder. He skimmed through the papers, stopped suddenly, and looked at me differently. "Mr. Reeves, these are government seals." Karen blinked. "What are you talking about?" He looked up at her. "This property was part of a federal lease before being privately transferred. Any infrastructure built through it without clearance is a federal violation. Karen's face turned stiff. That can't be right. We had clearance. From who? I asked quietly. She froze. Her radio crackled. The man on the other end whispered something that made her eyes widen. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed toward her car. But before she could leave, I said, "Hey, Karen, remember yesterday when you said I'd regret this?" She stopped, her hand on the car door. I smiled. You were right. Someone will regret it, but it won't be me. She glared at me, then slammed the door and sped off down the dirt road, dust swirling behind her like smoke. I knew she wasn't done yet. People like her never stop until they get the last word. But this time, I had more than words waiting for her. That night, the ranch was too quiet. The cattle stayed near the fence like they sensed something off. Around midnight, my security lights flickered once, then went out completely. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The air smelled like dust and metal, freshly cut wire. I followed the beam toward the valve station near the barn. And that's when I saw it. The pipeline hatch was open again. Someone had been here. Before I could move, headlights flared from the dirt road, blinding me. 3 black SUVs rolled up in silence, engines humming low. The first door opened and Karen stepped out, this time in a dark coat flanked by 2 men in tactical gear. She wasn't playing HOA president anymore. She was acting like she ran a government agency. "Step back, Mr. Reeves," she said coldly. "This is an emergency repair operation. You're interfering with public utilities." I tilted my head. "At midnight." She didn't answer. The 2 men started moving toward the valve. One of them carried a crowbar, the other a power drill. I could hear them whispering about rerouting the flow. I raised my voice. "You touch that valve, you're trespassing on federal ground." Karen turned sharply. "You're not scaring anyone with your fake federal talk. We already checked. You're just a rancher who bought this land a few years ago." I smiled faintly. "You didn't dig deep enough." I stepped closer, just enough for the flashlight to catch the silver badge clipped to my belt. Her eyes darted toward it, and for a second she froze. The badge gleamed under the moonlight. "You're law enforcement?" she muttered. "Retired," I said. "Federal Infrastructure Unit. The same people who approve or deny pipelines like the one you just drilled through my ranch." Her face drained of color. "You're bluffing again." "Then go ahead," I said. "Keep drilling. But when that pressure line bursts, you'll be looking at a $200,000 fine and a felony count." Her men hesitated, tools still in hand. Karen hissed at them, "Do it!" "He's lying." And then, right on cue, the ground rumbled. A sharp hiss burst from the line, spewing water and dirt into the air. The men stumbled back as the pressure roared, spraying the SUV windshield. Karen screamed, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" I just stood there, watching her panic. "You see," I said over the noise, "I didn't shut your water off. You did that yourself the moment you crossed that property line." She stared at me, drenched and furious. "You're finished," she spat. "You'll be in jail by morning." I pointed toward the camera pole above the barn. "You might want to smile for that one. It's live streaming to the county server." Her lips trembled. "You think anyone will believe you over me?" I took a slow breath and said, "They won't have to believe me. They'll see you." The engines revved again as her men scrambled back to the SUVs. Karen glared one last time before shouting, "This isn't over," and disappearing into the darkness. As the dust settled, I turned off my flashlight and whispered to myself, "No, Karen, it's just getting started." By sunrise, the videos had already gone viral. My neighbor, an old rancher down the road, called before I even poured my coffee. "You ain't gonna believe this," he said. "Your HOA queen just made the morning news. They're showing her flooding her own crew." I opened my phone, and there it was. A drone clip from my security feed, broadcasted all over social media. Karen drenched, screaming, the valve exploding behind her. The caption read, "HOA president caught. Tampering with private pipeline, owner turns. Out to be federal inspector." By noon, reporters were parked at the gate. I didn't talk. I didn't need to. The footage was speaking louder than I ever could. But then around 2 p.m., another vehicle pulled up, not reporters this time. 2 black sedans, tinted windows, and a county seal on the plates. The man who stepped out wasn't from the HOA. His suit was crisp, voice steady. "Mr. Reeves," he said, "I'm Agent Porter, County Infrastructure Division. We need to talk about what you discovered." Karen arrived moments later, red-faced and desperate, trying to explain herself. This man has been sabotaging public property. He threatened me, shut down our water. Porter raised a hand. Enough, Ms. Grayson, we've reviewed the footage. She went silent, eyes darting nervously between us. Porter turned to me. You were right. That HOA project wasn't cleared through federal channels. The materials they used, the funding, none of it checks out. Looks like someone's been building more than just a water line. I narrowed my eyes. What do you mean? He glanced at Karen. You mind telling him where this pipeline really leads? Karen's face turned white. She didn't speak. Porter sighed. It wasn't just a neighborhood water line. It was a diversion route for a private construction contract, illegal by every measure. Someone in the HOA signed off on it, and your friend here seems to be in the center of it. Karen snapped. You can't prove that. Porter tilted his head. We already did. He held up his tablet, showing transaction records and digital signatures, hers. She froze, eyes glassy, realizing she was cornered. You don't understand, she stammered. They told me it was authorized. They said it was part of the Green Development Fund. I stepped closer, voice low. You trespassed on my land, threatened me, and lied to the law. All for a fake pipeline? She shook her head, tears welling up. I didn't know. But Porter wasn't buying it. He nodded toward the officers waiting by the cars. Ms. Grayson, you're under arrest for unauthorized land excavation, falsifying public documents, and misuse of federal property. Karen gasped. You can't do this. I'm HOA president. Porter gave a cold smile. Not anymore. As they took her away, she turned her head and looked right at me. You set me up, she yelled. I looked her in the eyes and said quietly, No, Karen. You set yourself up the moment you thought rules didn't apply to you. And for the first time since this all began, the ranch finally felt quiet again. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over. Not yet, because behind that pipeline, there was something even bigger no one had talked about. 2 weeks passed. The dust started to settle, or so I thought. The county sealed off the trench and labeled the area under federal investigation. Karen was gone, charged and stripped of her HOA title. But the quiet that followed felt strange, almost forced, like a pause before the next storm. Then, one afternoon, I got a letter. No return address, no stamp, just my name written in neat, tight handwriting. Inside was a single photo, a satellite image of my ranch. There was a bright red circle drawn around a spot behind the north barn, near where the pipeline had started. And under it a message, you didn't find it all. I drove straight to the location that evening. The dirt looked freshly packed, like someone had been digging there again. My gut tightened. I started shoveling. 10 minutes in, my spade hit something metal. When I brushed away the soil, I saw it, a buried control box smaller than a briefcase, with a blinking green light still running. It wasn't water equipment. It was a signal relay. Someone had been transmitting data through that pipeline. I disconnected the cables and carried the box into the barn. As soon as I powered it down, my phone buzzed, a blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. A calm voice said, Mr. Reeves, that device you just touched doesn't belong to the HOA. And Karen wasn't working alone. Who is this? I asked. The voice ignored me. Whatever you do, don't hand that box to local authorities. They won't know what to do with it. Meet us tomorrow at 9 a.m. outside the county courthouse. Bring the device. We'll explain everything. Then the line went dead. The next morning I drove to town, the box locked in my truck bed. But when I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, it was chaos, news vans, sirens, agents everywhere. Someone had broken into the evidence locker overnight. All the HOA documents and digital drives were gone. Agent Porter spotted me and ran over. Reeves, where's the device? Please tell me you didn't bring it here. It's in the truck, I said, pointing over my shoulder. He froze. No, you need to leave right now. Someone's tracking anything linked to that signal system. And right then I heard it. A faint ticking sound coming from the truck bed. Porter's face turned pale. Move, he shouted. We dove behind a concrete barrier just as a blast ripped through the air, shattering the courthouse windows and flipping the truck onto its side. Smoke rose high over the town. My ears rang, but Porter's voice cut through it. That wasn't just a pipeline project. It was a cover operation. Someone used the HOA to build a data line through private land, and you just blew their trail wide open. I looked at the burning wreckage, my mind spinning. So Karen wasn't the real villain, I said slowly. Porter shook his head. No, she was just the face of something much bigger. And for the first time I realized, this war wasn't about water or land anymore. It was about control. The explosion made national news by sunrise. Every major network ran the same headline. Illegal data pipeline disguised as HOA, Project Federal Probe expands. My ranch was sealed off again, but this time, it wasn't the HOA or the county, it was the Department of Homeland Security. I stood behind the yellow tape, watching agents in hazmat suits pull charred cables from the ground. Porter approached, his face worn and serious. You did the right thing, Reeves, he said. That box was transmitting encrypted data to offshore servers. Whoever built this network was using local HOAs as a front for surveillance. I shook my head slowly. So Karen was a pawn? He nodded. She thought she was approving a green infrastructure project. In reality, she was signing off on a covert data grid running under private land. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at the hole where the pipeline had once run. The land looked torn, scarred, but somehow free again. Then Porter added quietly, the thing is, we don't know who funded it. The shell companies disappear as fast as we trace them. You still might not be safe. I gave a dry laugh. Safe stopped being an option the moment they dug through my land. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, You've got two choices, Reeves. You can walk away, or you can help us finish this. I didn't answer. My eyes were on the horizon, the same horizon I used to watch every morning before the HOA came barging into my life. The peace I'd fought for wasn't really peace anymore. It was something heavier. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the hills. My hands were rough, my fences broken. But my ground was finally mine again. For now. The news anchor's voice echoed faintly from the TV inside. Former HOA President Karen Grayson has been sentenced to 5 years for document forgery and unauthorized land excavation. Authorities believe her organization was unknowingly used in a larger, federal-level scheme. I turned off the TV and smiled faintly. Unknowingly, I murmured. Sure. A gust of wind blew across the porch. I glanced toward the north field where the trench had been filled. Something glinted in the dirt, small, metallic, almost invisible. I walked over and picked it up, a chip, the same kind from that control box. For a moment, I just stared at it, feeling that familiar chill crawl up my spine. I looked around at the quiet land and whispered, You thought you buried your tracks, didn't you? I slipped the chip into my pocket and headed back toward the house. Because if they thought the rancher had gone back to his quiet life, they were wrong. They built a pipeline through my ranch. Now I'm about to follow it all the way back to them, and that was just the beginning.